Aliens are among us, and apparently they're super horny. Welcome to the newest episode of SDW.
Super Dario World!
It's a me,
Dario!
Woohoo! Let's go!
Since I still technically have HBO, I decided to take advantage of it and go back and watch other HBO shows. So, because I have HBO for Game of Thrones, now it's done. Now I'm going to cancel it soon. But in the meanwhile, it's no point in canceling it before I have to, right? So I decided to go back and watch Rome. And son of a bitch, that's a great show, man. It's fan-fucking-tastic. It was so well made. It sucks that they did not finish it out. They only did 2 seasons, and they closed up the story. But a friend of mine recently told me that one of the creators of the show wanted to go all the way to 5 seasons, and he told me kind of how he wanted it to end, and it sounded amazing. Now, I wish he hadn't told me because I was happy with the way the show wrapped up. It just sucked. It sucks because it was so short, and the reason it was so short is because it was so expensive to make. Actually, Game of Thrones is, in a very real way, a consequence of Rome, the way it was made, because Rome was fantastic. Everybody loved Rome. It was great. But it was super expensive to make because they wanted to make it so realistic. So what HBO learned with that is if we want to keep making shows this big, we kind of have to give up a little bit on certain aspects. So that's why certain things in the quality of Game of Thrones, when compared to Rome, again, you can't compare the two. One is super historically accurate. The other one is technically medieval fiction. So and fantasy. So when you compare the two, you can tell where they cut a lot of corners in Game of Thrones in terms of production value and in terms of story, in terms of all that stuff. So it's a great show. I highly recommend it. I rewatched the first couple of episodes yesterday. They're so good. They're so fucking good. I love that show. It's fantastic. I'm going to finish it out before my HBO subscription is over. It may be the greatest show of all time. that would be an interesting list. A really hard one, but off the top of my head, I think that's the best one overall. Because from beginning to end, again, it's short. The advantage is that it's short. Sometimes some shows overstay the welcome. Game of Thrones. Some shows, you never know. But what we have was great, and it wrapped up, and it was perfect, and I loved it. I highly recommend it. Anyway, before I get into the whole alien thing, let me give you a quick reminder. The podcast is now officially part of the show's podcast network, which means you can find it in the iHeartRadio app. Just type in The Show Presents Super Dario World. You'll find it right there. You can also find it in the rock1053.com page, the podcast tab, or in the Follow Along with the Show tab. And you can still find it on SoundCloud and YouTube and iTunes. Just type in Super Dario World Podcast. You'll find it right there, whichever you like best. As always, you can always contact me at Dario the Show on Instagram. Any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can always reach out to me right there. I love interacting with you guys. I had a bunch of people reach out to me yesterday who wanted to talk about the movie Your Name, which I recommended yesterday. So I think I'm going to do that. Like this little thing before the beginning of the show. It's like, you know what? I'll just talk about what I saw yesterday. I won't get too deep into it. Just talk a little, and you guys can reach out and talk about it. And that way, it's a way for me to interact more with you guys. I'm enjoying it. It's fun. I like recommending things and hearing back from people who agree that I don't have terrible taste. But okay.
Welcome to Earth.
So this is one of my favorite news stories of all time. I have no idea whether this is news, but I love it. I love that it came into mainstream media. Apparently, there's a professor from Oxford that's making news because he's claiming that aliens are here and they're breeding with humanity. Now, there's so many interesting things in this article, so freaking many. But to me, this is the biggest thing. Okay, this is the thing that's gonna kick everything off. For me, this is the most important piece of information you'll find out. Okay? The guy who makes this claim, he's a Korean lecturer by the name of Dr. Young-Hae Chi. I think that's how you say it. Young-Hae Chi, who teaches at Oxford's Oriental Institute. Now, here's the fun fact about Young-Hae Chi, or Dr. Chi. I'm going to say Dr. Chi. It might be Chai, I don't know. But from Dr. Chi. This is according to the website for Oxford, okay? These are his research interests. In structural technique in the acquisition of modern languages, Christianity in Korean religious culture, dialogue between ethics, politics, and Christianity, North Korea refugee problems, and the role of NGOs. How does any of that have anything to do with aliens? Why is anybody I mean, sure, he has doctor in front of his name, but come on! That's one thing has nothing to do with the other. Like, if a doctor, you won't go to a doctor of literature if you have a cold. He won't cure you of freaking cancer. This dude he's a doctor of ethics, politics, and Christianity. What are you doing, guy? Why? I don't get it. But I love it. It's so great. And he brought an interesting topic to light, and he did it in a really weird way. So there's two topics there that I find really interesting. And I'll start with the first one. Let's start with aliens. So he thinks that aliens, well, he's claiming that alien visitors from outer space have been coming to Earth and they're breeding with humans to create, and the reason why they're coming here is to create a superior species, right? Now, on the surface, I know that sounds completely bonkers, but let's try to find some logical reasoning to it. Like, why would aliens come here and reproduce with us instead of just, I don't know, maybe just coming here and conquering, you know? Because if they come here in a way that if they're capable of long-range interspace travel, then clearly they have better technology, right? So why wouldn't they just show up and conquer us? Well, the explanation for that is that human beings are native to Earth, and there's a bunch of bacteria here. If you ever watched War of the Worlds, and spoiler alert, in War of the Worlds, the reason why humanity wins is because the aliens got sick because of the bacteria here on the planet. So humans are native to the planet. The bacteria here, we've evolved with them. They don't really affect us. They live with us. Actually, I think we have more bacteria in our bodies than cells that are our own. But anyway, so if aliens come here, they won't have those natural resistance, and so they'll die. So if they think, well, you know what? Maybe if we breed with a human and we create a hybrid, then they'll have certain of the physical advantages and the resistances of being a human, and certain of the advantages and physical advantages for being an alien, right? So on the surface, it doesn't sound that ridiculous, except it's batshit crazy. Why? Because one of the things that they're saying, well, that this guy's saying, is that a part of the plan is that the first generation, okay, so a human breeds with an alien, the first generation still looks really weird, but if that generation breeds with another human, then they can kind of camouflage their way into Earth. They could live among us, and you couldn't detect that they're an alien, right? Okay, so let's break that down. Are there people on Earth that look like aliens? Yes. Mark Zuckerberg comes to mind. Well, he's closer to a robot. But anyway, doesn't matter. But I mean, here on Earth, we have a thing called mules that you get when you breed a horse with a donkey, right? I think it has to be a male donkey and a mare. So, I think that's the easiest way to do it. So you breed them and then you create a mule, and mules are generally sterile because horses have 64 chromosomes and donkeys have 62. So since the mule ends up having 63 chromosomes, then then they can't breed. That's logic behind that, because they need a certain amount. So mules cannot breed within each other. I think certain mules can breed with like a horse or a donkey, but they're really rare, and I think it's only females. So the point is, let me double check that. Yeah, horses have 64, donkeys have 62, and so right there you have a clear example of two breeds that are actually kind of similar that can reproduce with each other, or that they can reproduce with each other, but the offspring comes out infertile because different chromosomes, right? Now, I'm guessing that humans with aliens are going to be way, way harder to mix together. But let's assume that they have all the technology, right? And especially because he gives 4 descriptions about how aliens look like, okay? One are like insects The other have scales and snake eyes. Others are small. Others are tall and bold. So there's 4 different species. How they're mixing together, I don't know. How they're working together, I don't know. Because as far as I know, bugs and reptiles do not get along. But anyway, let's assume that they do. And let's assume that they found a way to, manipulate genetics and to make it so that the next generation comes out fertile and for them to take mostly the physical traits of the humans and all that stuff. Fine. Let's go with that. Professor of Korean Studies in Government and Religion. Okay. Let's go with that. So they say that the reason why they came to Earth is because they want to colonize it through that because they think that, apparently it's because they fucked up their own planet, so they want to come here and they want to save ours, right? Okay? Because they want to live here and because it's a nice place. Now, I need to clarify this. I'm speculating that that's why they want to mix with humans, okay? For the genetic advantages, for the resistance, for the bacteria, all that stuff. That's my speculation. This guy says something completely different. He says that what they want to do is create a species that survives future climate conditions. So basically, aliens are here to save us from global warming. In a nutshell. That's pretty much it, right? So I'll get into global warming in a minute. Let's start off with, so aliens had to leave their planet because they fucked it up, and they came to Earth, and they kind of want to save Earth because they kind of want to live here too, right? Also, according to abductees' reports, they say that the hybrids have a very high intelligence, and so that they're producing the hybrids as problem solvers and future leaders of Earth. Okay? Here's another fun and probably more important morsel of information. So they come not for our sake, but for the sake of them, their survival. But their survival is actually our survival as well, the survival of the entire biosphere. I'll let that sink in for a minute. So they're coming here to make us smarter and to lead us into the future, as well as for their own survival, right? Okay, let me see if I can point a few holes in that logic right there. For starters, if these guys have to come here because they fucked up their own planet, why should we trust them in saving our planet? First off, it's not the same fucking planet. There's no way they know everything about how our planet works, unless they've been here for a really long fucking time, in which case they're stupid for not making the move before we invented nukes, because humanity's going down swinging for sure. Anyway, so they fucked up their own planet, and I guess that qualifies them to come here to our planet and tell us what to do and how to fix it, because they're smarter than us because they fucked up their own planet. This is the equivalent of you hiring the surgeon who's only ever killed all of his patients. I'm sure he's learned a lot killing all those patients. But you don't want to be the first guy he doesn't kill, right? I mean, you ideally want to be the first guy he doesn't kill, but you don't want to risk being the next guy on that list. Does that make sense? If that's too ridiculous of an example, let's say you wouldn't hire a mechanic who has a car that doesn't work, or who fucked up his own car and it doesn't work, and so he wants to fix your car to borrow it. Does that make sense? I think that's a more accurate metaphor. Your mechanic, your car's fucked up, so you go to the mechanic. No, actually, your car, you don't even go to the mechanic. So you have a car and it's kind of fucked up. It's still running. It's still good. It'll last a few more years. And a mechanic shows up and is like, hey, I'll fix your car. I'm here, man. I want to fix your car. In exchange, I get to use it too. And you're like, okay, well, what's wrong with your car? And you're a mechanic? Like, oh, yeah, I fucked up my car. But don't worry. I can fix yours. And we'll both ride it together. Carpool. Saving money on gas, bro. Anyway, ridiculous. I'm sorry I did that. But anyway, that would be a most accurate example, right? So that's this guy's theory. And I found it hysterical. And his preface is that humanity is going to come to an end. Now, I want to finish up with the alien thing before I get to the global warming thing, because one thing kind of has to do with the other. So there's 1,000,001 different theories about aliens in the universe. There's a theory that aliens connect up humans to make them zoos in intergalactic space zoos. There's a theory that they come and abduct humans like this one and breed with us because they're horny bastards and they want to create a super species. There's a theory that there's nobody else in the universe. There's a theory that Earth is just a TV show that aliens watch. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of theories out there, and some of them are interesting, some of them are ridiculous, and some of them are interesting because they are ridiculous. But how do I feel about alien life in the rest of the universe? I think humanity has been exploring the stars for long enough. Then there are certain pieces of evidence that hint that aliens have been here on Earth. I tend to not worry about it. If there is any life out there, so far they seem to have left us alone, which I think is cool. You know, I don't bother you, you don't bother me. Cool. I'm an individualist. You do your thing, you do ours, we'll do ours. Just let's leave each other alone. Now, the universe is so big. I'm pretty sure that there's alien life out there. I don't know if it's intelligent alien life, but there's definitely life out there. The universe is so huge. So huge. There's a picture out there, and you can Google it. I believe you can find it as 15,000 galaxies in one image. So this is a picture taken by the Hubble Space Telescope about one tiny piece in the sky. So what they say is that if you grab one particle of sand and you put it up against the night sky, the area that's blocked out by that particular particle of sand is the area that this picture covers, right? And so in that picture, you see what looks like 15,000 different lights. If you go closer into it, you realize that every single one of those stars or lights is a galaxy. So in one in the equivalent of one particle of sand of the sky, from where you're standing and looking up, that's what I mean, you get 15,000 galaxies. Now, how many stars are there in a galaxy? The average is estimated to be about 100,000 million stars. So, you do not want to do the math on that. And that is how many stars are there in just one particular part of that fucking of the sky? Just again, one particle of sand, the equivalent of if you keep going in a straight line. Anyway, you don't want to do the math on that, okay? And so the universe is way too big. And imagine if only, let's say, 1 in 10 of those stars has a planet around it. And only that's still, 10,000 trillion million stars per galaxy. And let's say that only one of those, one out of 10 out of every single one of those planets is an habitable zone. You know what? Let's say that 1,000. Let's say 1 million of those planets. Only one out of every million planets is in the habitable zone of a star. That means that there's still 100,000 planets in the habitable zone of a star per galaxy. Okay, so that's a lot. The numbers, the universe is so fucking vast, and a lot of people don't understand how vast it is. Now, the nearest star, which is Alpha Centauri, the nearest star to our star, Sol, is 4.2 light years away. So, for those of you who don't know, a light year is a measure of distance. It's the distance traveled by light in 1 year, which is roughly 6 trillion miles. Okay? So, if it's 4 light years away, that means that it's over 4.22. That means that it's over 24 trillion miles away. The closest star to ours. Okay? Which means that if we found a way to travel at light speed, it would take us 4.222 years to get there. Okay? Traveling at light speed, which as far as we know is the speed limit to the universe. Nothing moves faster than light, or nothing has moved faster than light that we know of. That's a speed limit of the universe. Okay? So, the universe is so fucking huge. There's too many things out there. It's so fucking vast. And the fact that we haven't really seen anything besides ourselves is not surprising, because there's so many things to see out there. There's so many possibilities. Okay? It's not a surprise that we haven't found anything yet. Okay? And there's so many fucking planets in habitable zones out there. The mathematical probabilities of there not being life on another planet are, I'd say, close to nil. Very close. So life being out there would not surprise me. I think there is life out there. Now, intelligent life is a different thing. There is a possibility that humanity might be the first species to achieve space travel. There's also a possibility that we're not. So I don't think it's going to be in our generation to know that. As of right now, I think that we might be, just because, I have human ego and all that stuff. But Well, we don't know. So, all those movies where aliens come and invade us? That might be us. That might be us doing it to other planets, because it does sound kind of like something humans would do. But anyway, that's not a concern. So I just want to get the alien thing out of the way and say that personally, I don't consider aliens to be a problem for us. At least not our generation. Maybe in the future. Right now, I think we're good. The odds of you getting abducted by an alien and having sex with it, I'd say, again, close to nil. But, in the end, doesn't matter, had sex, right? Anyway, so what's this doctor doing, huh? What's this guy up to? What's his agenda? Well, then it comes down to the global warming thing. And here's where things get interesting. I find the topic, let's call it climate change. If I say global warming and I say climate change, means the same fucking thing. Basically. Oh, it doesn't mean the same thing, but to me, I'm using it as the same thing right now. Anyway, I remember the first time I heard anything about global warming and climate change, and it came from the documentary An Inconvenient Truth. Now, if you guys listened to yesterday's podcast, I gave you my feelings about politicians. I don't tend to trust them, because I know they're up to something. There's always something behind every single thing they want to sell, because they're selling something. And so I usually tend to take with a grain of salt what I hear from politicians. So my first source of information for global warming, for climate change, was Al Gore. And if you remember the documentary, it paints things in an almost apocalyptic scenario. The world is almost beyond saving, right? If we don't do something now, you're dead. And we need to save the earth. It's so drastic. It's so dramatic. But then I remember at the end, the dude doesn't give any fucking solutions. I remember that's one of my big critiques. It's a horrible way to make a movie, by the way. Here's the problem, and the solution is, let me see if I can remember how he said, we're Americans, we've solved bigger problems before, and we will do it again. I trust us, we can do it. Do what? Like, apocalypse, the end of the earth. What are we supposed to do? Anyway, so he doesn't give us anything to do. Now, naturally, if you're a paranoid person like myself, you start doing some fucking research, because apparently you're about to die, right? Right. And I've been hearing this spiel from politicians for years now. Like the latest one, and I found it hysterical, is that we're all going to die in 12 years. Now, I do not tend to prescribe to the global warming thing. Climate change is different, but okay. I said I was going to do it as the same thing, but okay. All right. Climate change, as far as I've seen, because I've done research on this, and because partly I'm paranoid, and I don't know if you guys know this, I am technically a scientist. I am not a climate scientist, which I would never claim to do, just like this Dr. Chai is a doctor of Korean. He's not a scientist. He's not a climatologist. He's not an expert on aliens. He's not an astronomer. He's not anything. Like, he's not an astrobiologist. I actually took an astrobiology class. So, anyway, doesn't matter. I'm not an expert on that either. I just know the basics. I know enough so that I could follow a conversation and know that I don't understand what the hell they're talking about, but I can nod along, understand a few terms, and not look like an idiot. That's as much as I know about astrobiology. But anyway, climate is different because, again, I thought I was going to die. So I started looking at the research, and from the beginning, I was kind of skeptical. I've always been skeptical about climate change because, as I already said, first source, politician. Don't trust them. Second thing, I'm supposed to be believing the dudes that predict the weather. As far back as I can remember, weathermen are the most unreliable dudes in the world. It's the only profession where you could fuck up every single day and not get in trouble for it. So I tended to not believe weather people that much. Third, I started going to the research. So I was skeptical for those two reasons, and then I started going into stuff, and things just don't add up to me. They're trying to sell us something, okay? And I'll get into what they're trying to sell. But here's my logic as to why I don't think it's that big of a deal. First off, and let's go with the latest assumption. The biggest thing that I've heard lately is that we're all going to die in 12 years. If we don't do something, the world is going to end in 12 years. For starters, it's supposedly that the CO2 emissions in the atmosphere, that's what's causing global warming, and that's what's going to cause the end of the earth, right? Now, here's the thing. The U.S. is not the leader of emissions in the world, not by far. Like, the biggest emitters come from developing countries, particularly China. So if we're all going to die in 12 years, why isn't everybody turning their nukes on China and saying, stop it, you son of a bitch, you're killing us, or we'll nuke you. So if you're destroying us and we're going to die in 12 years, then we're going to nuke the fuck out of you, and guess what? Emissions will go way down. So the fact that nobody's doing that makes me think, maybe not that big of a deal. Another factor, for those of you who don't know, I live in sweet sunny San Diego, which is on the coast. And the real estate prices of beachfront property has been going steadily up because it's beachfront property. It's nice. But I remember that I've been told that the sea levels are rising. Now, generally, the people who have beachfront houses are wealthier. And as far as I know, wealthy people don't like throwing their money away. So why would people keep investing in beachfront property if the ocean levels are going to rise? That means that people would be running from the coast, right? They'd be like, fuck this place. I'm going to sell my house for whatever I can now while I still can, and I'll get somewhere up in the mountains. I'll live somewhere up in the hills, which will eventually become beachfront property, but they're not doing that. So if the wealthy aren't doing that, people who are not prone to throwing their money away, then that makes me think also like, okay, there's something kind of fishy going on here too. Another thing that doesn't make any sense. Now, again, from what I read, FCC reports have been wrong every single time. They've overestimated the temperature. They've overestimated the CO2 levels. They've overestimated a whole bunch of stuff. And the reason why they keep fucking up is because they exaggerated, for starters. And second, they did not estimate the changes that would come from the changes that we do in our technology or the way that we... Okay, so they're assuming that it's going to follow a trend. So let's say something... You estimate for the next 20 years, something is going to go one way, but technological advances make that thing change. And also maybe the fact that you put out this report made people like, oh shit, we got to change our minds. We got to stop doing things the way that we're doing it, and that makes that change. So it's not surprising that the reports have been wrong so far. But as I've been doing the research, the Earth's temperature has been steadily going up since the ice ages. There's only a blimp in the radar now in the human age, and that's in the last 100 years. It's 1 degree Celsius higher than it should have been, according to the previous predictions. So humanity has only been responsible for 1 degree of change in temperature in the last 100 years. So when you read polls that say that 97% agree, or 97% of scientists agree that humans are responsible for climate change, most of them will say yes, because we're responsible for 1%, for 1 degree change. And so it's technically correct. So if you ask me, are humans responsible for climate change? Yes, by 1 degree. So, but you don't get that in a poll. So the information has been taken way, way out of context, and there's a lot of things that they don't consider. For example, here's some of the things that they just did not consider. The Earth is too large, and there's too many factors, and nobody's an expert in everything. I'm not an expert in everything. Fortunately, I have the advantage of being able to look back and kind of just see the things that 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 7. So, I mean, it doesn't equal 7, but you can just order. If you have the end result, you can just go back and see what caused it. So we have that advantage. So, okay, I'll give you an example. Right now, there are more trees in North America than in the Northern Hemisphere in general that there have ever been in human history. A lot of people don't know that. There's also a record. In California alone, we had a record in the production of strawberries, and we've broken that record like 3 years in a row. I think 2019 we're also going to break the production of strawberries. Now, why? Let's see how A plus B equals C. So we have what could be causing more strawberries, more trees, more food. Well, we have an abundance of CO2 in the air. What do plants eat? CO2. So if there's an abundance of CO2 in the air, that means that plants have more foods. That means that they can grow faster, bigger, all that stuff. That's why that's why companies like Sherry's Berries exist. Do you think? How do you think a company can sell on a national level strawberries? That's so many fucking strawberries that are needed in order for that to happen, and yet they do it year after year, and they've been successful. That's because the production of strawberries has gone up because there's more plant food in the air. So plants are growing. They are flourishing in the civilized world. In first world countries, it's different than third world countries or developing countries. Completely different technology. The point is, things are not as dire as they seem, and that's one of those things that a climatologist cannot think about, because what they're looking at gas levels, they're looking at temperature changes, they're looking at winds, they're looking at water, and they're looking at all that stuff. But they're not thinking, well, the things that a botanist would look at. Okay, so plants have more food, and what happens when more plants are out there? Well, they'll eat more of the CO2, which makes it go down, which makes it level it up. The Earth is so big and it tends to level itself out. So if temperature rises in one place, what happens? More water evaporates. More water evaporates, that means that the temperature goes, and then rain happens, and then the temperature lowers a little bit. So the Earth finds a way of balancing itself out. It's existed for a billion years. It knows how to balance itself out. Humans are not as powerful as we think, unless we consider nukes. But anyway, the other argument that I've heard for climate change is that it's causing more severe storms. It's causing more damage than ever before. Hurricanes, blah, blah. Now, on the surface, that is true. Hurricanes are causing more damage, but not for the reason that you would think. I'll agree. They cause more damage. Why? Because we built more expensive shit there. Now, the problem is not that hurricanes have become stronger. Hurricanes are exactly the same in quantity, in power, in everything that they've always been. Storms are still the same. The only difference is that we keep building more expensive shit there. Now, why do we keep building shit in places where hurricanes happen? I have no idea. Like, if I built a house on a dry riverbed, and then all of a sudden it rained, and my house, just got swept in the fucking river, I'd be like, fuck, I shouldn't have built it there. And as soon as that river dries up again, I built an even more expensive house there, then I'm the idiot. Okay? I'm the idiot for building there because that place is a fucking riverbed. I should know better by now. But anyway, we keep doing it because we think that we're the masters of the earth and we can survive a fucking hurricane, right? Anyway, humans are dumb. But let's continue with other factors. I saw this news about this company that I don't know why it didn't make more news. It's probably the most important news if you care about climate stuff that has happened in the last decade. But there's a company in Canada who created a way to recycle. What they do is they suck CO2 from the air and they turn it into fuel and they find a way to recycle it. So it's recyclable CO2. Supposedly the problem with climate change is there's too much CO2 in the atmosphere. Now this company announced this in January. Why the fuck is nobody talking about this? Why? You have a renewable source of energy from one of the sources of climate change, right? If you really cared, here's the thing, I don't think they really care. If you really cared about climate change, you'd be jumping for joy. You'd be like, fuck yeah, we fixed it. And you know what's crazy? They say that it would cost approximately $100 to get a ton of carbon dioxide off the air. Okay, 1 ton. Yet nobody's talking about investing in this company, investing in this technology, investing in this research. Why? Because they're trying to sell you something. But we'll get more to that in a minute. So another factor to consider is that, well, one of the reasons why you could say, oh, they don't want to support this is because you're still dependent on the CO2. And Dario, you just said that CO2 is good for plants and all that stuff. Fine. I'll take it. It's a valuable critique. I'm just saying that if you're worried about the CO2 levels in the atmosphere and you have a way to recycle that into fuel and you're not investing in it, there's something wrong with you. I mean, you should at least be looking into it hard. So, especially because your alternatives suck. Now, a lot of people say, no, we have to invest in solar and wind energy. Here's a fun fact. The country that leads in renewable energy is Germany. Now, Germany's CO2 emissions actually went up because it turns out that solar and wind energy are not that reliable, so they had to revert to coal in order to supplement all the energy that they lost. And they also had to buy energy or get energy from France. Why from France? Because France has a little thing called nuclear energy, which is not only clean, it's renewable, and it's safe. So you have safe, renewable, and reliable energy in nuclear energy, and yet you don't want to support it. Why? I understand why. And that's because nuclear energy is scary for a lot of people because of Chernobyl and stuff like that. And the thing is, you have to understand that Chernobyl happened in the worst country in the world at the time. The Soviet Union was the worst place on earth at the time. They did not follow any regulations whatsoever. And so it was not surprising that that happened. The U.S. has so many regulations, so many safety precautions. There's never been a nuclear issue in the U.S. because of it, or at least not that I remember. Or if there was so well hidden that we didn't know. I wouldn't put past the government. But anyway, so they're not suggesting nuclear energy. I don't know why, because it's scary. They're not suggesting recyclable CO2 energy. They're suggesting wind and solar, which, by the way, we don't have a way to store. So at the end, there's such a huge financial incentive to figuring out renewable energy. The person who figures out how to extract the most amount of energy from the solar energy and store it and use it, because there's the problem with solar energy is that we're not getting all that we could. I think it's a super low percentage. I don't want to say it. I think it's like something like 20 or 40%. There's nowhere near what we could get is nowhere near compared to what we could get, and that's the issue. And we have no way to store it. So the person who figures that out will be richer than God. Will make so much money. So there's a lot of financial incentive to figure that out. I think that's why those are still being pushed. The others I don't get. It costs a lot of money and infrastructure to create all those things. Friggin' wind panels cost a lot of money to make. I don't know why the people that keep wasting money on that, because it's not reliable. To me, it makes no sense. So to me, every single thing that I've done my research on climate change-wise makes no sense. And so it comes into the conspiracy theory of they're trying to sell something. These are politicians that are pushing it, and they're using data polls and they're skewing it to their advantage because that's what they do, honestly. Do you think any politician is really honest? I don't think so. And so they're using that to what? To sell fear. They want to keep you afraid, and they're like, oh yeah, well, I'm aware of this problem, so you should vote for me. Don't trust those people. At least that's my recommendation. I think they're liars. I think that they think that you're an idiot who's not going to do their research, and I don't like that. So, overall, in conclusion, that Dr. Chi he should stick to teaching Korean. I mean, he's probably a great Korean professor, but he should not be talking about linking aliens to climate change, because neither of those make sense. Aliens who want to create hybrid humans who will most likely be infertile to stop climate change, which so far none of the evidence proves that it's actually a big problem, right? That didn't make any sense. And when I read that article, I was like, how? This is fantastic. I love every single thing about this because it's insane. And I don't know why they keep feeding us all this garbage. Do they not know that the internet exists? Do they not know that we could just easily fact check them? It's not that hard. Honestly, it's really not that hard. And plus, we can look outside. I remember, you know how many times the Earth should have ended since I've been born? I remember Y2K. I remember the Aztec calendar thing. I remember the prophecy, who was it, Nosferatu? The Earth, now global warming. The Earth has supposed to be, they've given me a deadline to my death since I can fucking remember. And so far, every deadline has come and passed. And to me, they want to sell you two things. One, they want votes. And two, they want you to consume shit. Okay? That's it. If you think you're going to die when you're at the bar, you're like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll get another round. Why? Because we might die tomorrow. And that's actually not a bad thing. I was in South Korea recently, and they party like crazy. And one of the reasons why they told me, I asked them, like, dude, why do you go so hard? Like, every night? Well, they don't do it every night, but some of them do. Some of them don't. But when they party hard. Because Korea and Japan are very similar. Japan are kind of more uptight, but the Koreans are a little bit more loose. They're a little bit more relaxed. And what they said is, dude, we spent 10 years thinking that we might die at any second. We deserve to let loose and just go crazy and enjoy it. And so I think that's what they're trying to sell. They're trying to keep you tense, and so that at the end you end up consuming more because you might fucking die. So that's my theory. That's how I feel. To me, if you ask me, there's more than sufficient evidence that points that the whole climate change, while being real, is nowhere near as big of the problem as they paint it out to be. Or, you know what? In 12 years, if we're dead, I'll say we're sorry. I'll say I'm sorry, okay? Doubt it's going to happen. And we don't have to change the U.S.'s entire fucking economy to fix it, especially because there's already a bunch of viable solutions up there. Again, reusable CO2 as fuel, nuclear energy. What more do you need? Honestly, those two would kind of fix it, because we still need a certain amount of CO2 in the air so that plants can eat. And I read also a very interesting article. It's an economic study where a bunch of Nobel Prize-winning economists, made a bunch of different teams, and they basically grabbed a wish list of all the millennials' goals. And so they grabbed all the goals that millennials want to accomplish, right? And so they grabbed all those. They made a study on each and every one. Different teams. They made a study on the pros and cons economically, which would be most beneficial economically from each and every single one of the goals. Again, beneficial goals. And they made a list, and they ranked them, and they did like a top 10. And, I don't think it was 10, because they grabbed like 200 goals, and they reduced by the most important ones. And then they compared every single one of theirs, and then they made another list with the ones that they agreed the most. Again, Nobel Prize-winning economists. And what they found is that in order to do the most benefit for the Earth, climate change is not even on that list. Like, most of the issues that, in order to have a net benefit worldwide, have to do with nutrition in kids of developing countries. Because the problem, and here's a very interesting thing, if you're hungry, you don't give a fuck about climate change, okay? If you're starving, you won't give a fuck about how much fuel you're spending. You don't care if you burn this tree, what's going to do to the atmosphere. You don't care about your city being clean. You don't give a fuck because you're hungry. Once you earn a certain amount of money, that's when you start caring about things like, oh, my city's dirty, because you're not at a point where you're just surviving. You're thriving, and when you thrive, that's when things get better. And I have a particular theory about this, and it has to do with men in general. Okay, and I don't mean mankind. I mean men in general, because I think societies grow in a very similar way that men grow. Okay, and this is my theory that I don't even know where I got it from, but this is the way that I feel about mankind. Now, or my gender. Now, men are extremely talented and extremely good at destroying things. It's honestly, it's our best skill. You leave a little kid, a little boy, alone in a house for 5 minutes and he can destroy it. We are fantastic at destroying stuff. I remember when I was growing up, you give me something, I was going to break it easily. I don't know why, but we're really good at destroying things. Now, a mark of maturity for men, and this is something that has to be some people have it intrinsically, but most of us, you need to educate us. You need to teach them how to destroy in a productive way. So, for example, if you want to build a house, you need to destroy some trees, right? So a mature man will destroy trees in order to build a house. So you need to balance it out. You need to become destructively productive, if that makes any sense. I have a great example for this. A friend of mine, his dad is a chef, and he gave his kid a slingshot. And so he was super excited he had a slingshot, and he went out and he killed a whole bunch of birds, right? So what the dad did is, when he found out, he grabbed one of the birds, he cooked it, and he made him eat it. So his message was, no son of mine is going to be a freaking predator. If you're going to kill something, you're going to eat it, because that's what hunters do. You're not a predator. Predators hunt for fun. You will be a hunter. So whatever you kill, you're going to eat. That friend of mine is now a chef. So you grab the immature destructive tendencies and you nurture it into something productive. Societies work in a very similar way. Now, if you look out throughout history, the most immature that we've been, the more destructive that we've been, the more that we fight with each other. The more that we mature, the more that we want to produce and create things that are better and create more peace and all that stuff. Now, a similar thing can apply to economic dependency. So if you're desperate, if you are hungry, if you're food, you will be more destructive because you won't care. The problem is that we didn't care or that we didn't know. As you educate people better, as you aren't scraping to survive, you start caring about more things. You start caring more about your environment. So the problem to climate change is really, according to economists, again, Nobel Prize winning economist is actually better served by helping the problem with poverty. Now, the problem of poverty has been extremely reduced worldwide. I think something about 80% of the world's population that was in extreme poverty is now not in extreme poverty. Okay, 80%. Capitalism has done wonders for poor people. Like right now, I believe that 17% of the world's population is in poverty right now, but 17%. In the 1980s, it was 53%. In the 1820s, that's 200 years ago, it was 94%. So things are going in a really good direction really quickly. We just kind of have to stop being bitches about it. That's the problem. And if you follow this trend, as our society has been getting better, as the world has been getting better, now we care about the environment, and that's why now you have a whole bunch of people screaming like, oh, we're going to die because of the climate, blah, blah. No, it's just that we're aware of it a little bit more now, and we care. We've gotten to a point where economically we care about it because everything else is going good, so we just want to make things better. Things have steadily been going better worldwide, and in a dramatic fashion. So I don't know why all this bitching is going on, and I don't know why all these people are trying to sell us something that's clearly not true. Because if you just look at enough data, you'll realize, here's the problem. They give you a lot of statistics from poll data that poll data doesn't mean shit. And I explained this one earlier. 97% of the scientific community agrees that humans are responsible for climate change. Yes, but 97% of those, or let's say the majority, agree because humanity is responsible for 1 degree change in the world's temperature. So technically, yes, you are correct, but you are asking the question and you're presenting the answer in a way that best suits that best suits what you're trying to sell, which is bullshit. But anyway, I think there's more I can get into this, but I think I've already gone deep. But I'm already at 40 minutes, so I think that, holy crap, I went too far. I'm sorry. I love conspiracy stuff. I love it. And there's a few that I subscribe to that I find super interesting. And there's a few that I'm just like, this is total bullshit. And you can debunk them pretty easily. And I love discussing it. So let me know what you think. Am I completely wrong? Did what I say make no sense? Am I a crazy person? Am I drinking from the crazy juice? I don't know. Let me know. Also, if you watch Rome, let me know. Hit me up. I love talking about that. And so for tomorrow, that's it for today. For tomorrow, I'll go back to my regular scheduled programming. I'll go back to my usual stuff. The Pokemon press conference happened yesterday, and the first kind of like gameplay trailer for Death Stranding was released as well. So I want to talk about those things, which is a way more fun topic for me. So tomorrow we'll be discussing that. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for me, hit me up at Dario the Show on Instagram. As always, thank you for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow.